guys, it's Ghosdee. Welcome to the channel if you're watching, and welcome to the pod if you're listening. This week, we'll be talking about Stephen King's forgotten hit mini TV series, Rose Red. We are still in the world of Stephen King here at Ghosdee Land. I've been waiting to revisit this show for years. I don't remember if I watched it when it aired, but I do know I watched it and I loved it. It had all the ingredients of a D fave, a group of psychics, it takes place in a haunted mansion, and it stars millennial teen witch fave Kimberly J. Brown, who's also in Halloween Town. I do know a lot of people tuned into this, but ultimately over the years it hasn't really stuck. And upon revisiting this, I can see why. I don't think it's all bad. I just think the CGI is a bit distracting. I have a little bit of confliction with one of the characters. I think that the writing is a bit flimsy. But ultimately, I do think that Rose Red is still fun. And if you're someone who likes haunted house horror, if you like Stephen King, you get this very familiar haunted house Victorian horror story through the lens of his mind. In this 3-episode made-for-TV miniseries, parapsychologist recruits a team of psychics to take a visit to the notorious Rose Red in order to record and prove that supernatural is real and thus to be respected as a real science. In this group of psychics, we have Kathy Kramer, an automatic writer who channels her abilities through automatic writing, Emery Waterman, who has the power known as retrocognition, which basically means he gets visions of the past, Nick Hardaway, who has the power of telepathy, Pam Asbury, a psychic who receives visions by touching objects, Vic, a psychic who gets visions of the future, and Annie, a non-verbal autistic teenager with teleconnected powers. Tagging along, and also the key to Rose Red, is Steve Rimbauer, who is a relative of the original owners of the mansion, and Annie's big sister, Rachel. I'm fascinated by the unique powers of each character. I think that's pretty cool. Psychics have individual powers. I will admit, I have some reservations about Annie being on the spectrum. I'll talk more about that later though. The leader, Dr. Joyce, is not the most interesting character in a sense that she has no powers or anything, but could be considered the most complex because of her passion and dedication to getting this proof. Just as much as this movie is about psychics tracking down ghosts in a glorious haunted house, it's about Joyce's ego driving her to madness. A classic horror trope that I personally love to see. In episode 1, we're introduced to the cast. We get this great bar scene where the cast are talking about their powers. We get to know them as individuals, and they're all very different people. Might I say, Stephen King has a thing for writing male characters that has mommy issues. I don't know if he has mommy issues. In general, Stephen King just sometimes, his perspectives with women, just, I don't know. I'm like, but anyway, we get to know the characters. We get a little bit more extensive scenes of the secondary main character, Annie. She reminds me of Carrie so much because she's telekinetic, but also there's flat out something that's just has to be ripped from Carrie, where she makes rocks fall out of the sky onto a house. That's literally a thing from Carrie, as a way to get revenge on a neighbor whose dog attacked her or her sister. Maybe it was her, I don't know, but I do know her sister encouraged her to do that, and I'm just like, why would you do that as a big sister? Like, why would you do that? In this episode, we get a sense that Annie's power is greater and somehow connected to Rose Red, not in a direct sense, but like maybe her power is the key to overcome the power. I don't know, it's just like, why are we getting this chick story so much in the first episode? So along with Annie lore, we're getting the lore of the house, of course. We learned that this house has an extensive history. The owners built it. There were a bunch of ghost stories, weird shit. The wife was building all these rooms, which was inspired by a real ghost story, the Winchester house. I was watching this and I was like, this is giving Winchester House, and then I was reading up on this later and I was like, oh, it was actually inspired by this. Stephen King actually decided that he wanted to write his own adaptation of the original story, The Haunting, which has been adapted into so many different things. So this is like Stephen King's take on that classic The Haunting story, and he's adding the Winchester spin on it. interesting. Now in episode 2, the crew has arrived and they explore more of this house. We get to see the traps and illusions that are in this house and some of its ghosts. A lot of this episode reminded me of the haunting, specifically the 1990 haunting. And for the most part, I enjoyed them exploring the house, but also it just felt like so much was going on. I wanted to just get to the end. I really enjoyed that first episode. I really enjoyed learning these characters, learning Joyce's passion. I enjoyed even how we get this empathetic perspective of people who do believe in the practice of parapsychology, which is the cross of paranormal and science. If we're going to be exploring these worlds, you should at least be doing that empathetically. And I wanted to stay in that, but episode 2 was just like, there's so much happening. I do like the ghosts. I'm calling them Stephen King ghosts because they're ghosts, but they kind of look like zombies because they're so fleshy and nasty, and they're always like lurking, you know, kind of like in the shadows, and then suddenly they're there and they're talking to you, and you're just like, is this half dead thing talking to me? So I like that. I like that we're seeing the ghosts, but I feel like there's too much going on, and I feel like there's too much happening in this house for them to still want to stay in the house. I'm just like, leave. Melanie Lynskey, guys. That's the sister. Melanie Lynskey is the fucking sister. Why I didn't mention that. Now, come this third episode, the crew is trapped. And I don't entirely understand how this trappedness works. I know that Annie is the one keeping them trapped because when she's knocked out, suddenly they're untrapped. But I don't know why she's keeping them trapped. I don't know if like the evil in the house is using her power. And that wasn't clear to me. The TV show might have made it clear. It just wasn't clear to me. Now, we kind of revisit more of the history of Rose Red regarding the mysterious disappearance of the husband. It's revealed that he was having an affair with the nanny best friend. So she and the nanny best friend pushed him off. It's so convoluted, like, and I'm like, maybe I'm dumb, but I'm like, this also doesn't make sense. Because I was reading on it and I'm like, that's what happened, but this does not make sense. The nanny and the wife just decided to kill the husband and have a lesbian love story. I don't know. It's a lot. It's a lot that I don't quite understand. And let me tell you, I sat and watched that twice and I'm still just like, the ghosts were ghosting. Annie has power. People die. People do die. Emery's mother shows up and Joyce like just succumbs to the fucking madness. She stays in the house. She's like, we have the proof. We have the proof and now I must stay. It's a great scene of her being swallowed by all the ghosts in the house. Good riddance, stay there. There is a small crew, the psychics that survive, including Annie and Annie's sister. Rose Red is dead and to rest for good. I love these psychics. I think that they're cool. I think that their powers are cool. I like seeing them come together. I enjoy learning about Rose Red and its history. On the surface level, the deeper shit is annoying. Like I said, the CGI is pretty distracting. It's involved in all the house trickery and traps, and it's just kind of laughable. The script, it's not great as a whole, but it has some great moments. Aside from the CGI, there's some great special effects, some gross bloody shit, especially with Emery's visions. I liked that. Now, I do have complicated feelings around Annie's character. I only bring this up because I noticed that in a couple of Stephen King's work, he often writes characters that are on the spectrum who also have powers, and I don't necessarily hate that. I just don't necessarily know how I feel about it. Another character that comes to mind is the character in Dreamcatcher. I don't know, it almost feels wrong for someone who isn't on the spectrum and maybe doesn't even have any experience or family members with it to be writing that. Annie particularly bothers me because of the way the cast also perceives her. I'm not the hugest fan of that. Something didn't say right. That's just all I'll say about that. But generally, Rose Red was an interesting revisit, and for those hardcore Stephen King fans, it's definitely something there. It's something to watch. It's just also kind of bad. Which isn't a bad thing. We have bad art sometimes, and that's fine. Even Stephen King writes bad shit, and I think that TV scripts isn't his strongest thing. I'm just gonna say that. But yeah, that's all I have for this episode. Thanks for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks for listening. If you're listening on Spotify, hopefully I'll be up on more streaming sites soon. I'm working on that. And until the next episode, you can catch me on social media. I'm on Instagram at Ghosdee, Twitter at Ghosdee_, and Letterboxd at Ghosdee. I'll see you guys in the next episode.